Hi folks, this is your girl Karina Dean, and I am back with another live video, and the time is now. So I have been desiring to do Sasha Fierce for some time now, and I had to abide by the contract with my ancestors, and so now I understand why I needed to wait. There is power and virtue in patience, and I am excited to bring to you now the origins, the truth about Sasha Fierce. So the first thing that I'm going to say is relating to those who need sources. A true truth seeker understands that they are the research. So when somebody asks you to give them the source, tell them, and what I'm going to start telling them is, I am the source. I am the research. And so are you. Fear is really what feeds the ignorant. So when we are in a place of fear, it's really because we're willfully protecting ourselves through ignorance. And fear is dissipated when we have knowledge, and when we acquire knowledge, when we do the research, and when we do the analysis. So with that being said, Sasha Fierce, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to start first with fierce, because that actually is pretty simple. Fierce comes from Old French, and it can be spelled F-I-E-R-S or F-I-E-R-S, like fear or fierce, fears. And it really means to be noble. It means to be bold, strong, and overwhelming. The Latin origins of fierce is the untamed, that which is untamed, right? So when we look at fierce, if you could see, it also means fire, basically, right? The bold, fire, so bold. Fire can be untamed. Fierce has the element of fire written in it. So when we are thinking about fierce, it's tied to the elements, and it's tied to this flame. It's tied to this untamed aspect of ourselves. It's a disruptive nature in the sense, because it goes against the norms. So that's fierce. Now Sasha is origins of Greek and Roman, and from these origins, Sasha is also spelled S-A-S-C-H-A, and it's the guardian of mankind. The shortened version of Sasha from Greek and Roman is Sasha is like a nickname for Alexander or Alexandra in the Greek and Roman origins. Now when we go deeper, when we go a little bit further behind that, we're diving more now into Eastern African language. And Sasha has the word Asha, A-S-H-A. And this is actually also related to the name Aisha, which means life. So Asha means life from Eastern African languages. Okay? So now we're diving into Swahili. And it's really hard for me to look up sometimes. I'm not going to say hard. It's challenging for me to sometimes use the etymology dictionaries, specifically online, because they really only go back to a certain, they go back to Latin, Old English, German, but it's hard to find etymology dictionaries that go, that use the history of African or Ethiopian languages. So it does require a little bit more, morning Michelle, hi Judah. It does require a little bit more research and just diving into history when we really want to understand the etymology of words when we're diving into African and Ethiopian origins. So in order to decode Sasha Fierce, I dived into Swahili, which is also known as Kiswahili, and it's a Bantu language. Similar to like the Bantu knots, B-A-N-T-U, a Bantu language. And this is a common language for those in Eastern Africa, it has a lot to do with a language that is for trading, so that people from different areas who speak different linguistics, right, they could commonly use this language in order to trade amongst different culture or different tribes. So that's what Swahili's origin is. It's a common language for those who were trading, right? So this is why Swahili is really helpful in understanding Sasha Fierce, because I can dive into African origins, and it doesn't just cover one kind of people. It actually covers a multitude of people. Hi, Jillian. Um, so Swahili brings people together because of its common language. And like I said, it governs the areas of East and Southern Africa, places like Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Mozambique, and the Republic of the Congo. So all of these areas are probably going to be familiar with Swahili or have origins in the Swahili language. And once Swahili becomes transcribed into written form, it was used with Arabic script, but it was also transformed into Latin alphabet due to the Christian influence of Christian missionaries in this area of Africa, and of course due to colonialism. So this is why it's sometimes a challenge to dive into etymology, because it only goes so far, and you have to know the history of Latin, French, and the religious takeovers of the areas, because that's when they start transcribing the African origins into written word, if that makes sense. I'm still learning as well. So Sasha comes from the Swahili concept of dividing people into threes. Okay? So dividing the human into threes. Now, the first is the living human. The second is the recently departed, those who have passed away. And then the third is the memory of the recently departed. Not the third is the memory of the departed, but we don't have any humans that remember them. So it gets a little complicated. Let me use some better terminology. So it's divided into threes: the living, right? The Sasha is the recently departed, and then the Zamani. So Sasha spelled Sasha, and the Zamani have to do with those who have passed away. Okay, so Sasha is, like I said, the recently departed, those whose time here on earth overlaps with those who are living. The Sasha live in the memories of others, so like the friends and the relatives, the co-workers. Now, Zamani, Zamani, has to do with the once the last person that has died knows, once this person has died and they don't have common relatives or common living relatives that remember them, right? Once all of that their living have passed away as well, then they become a part of the Zamani. So it's like three portions of time: the living, the recently passed, and the past, those who have passed, but there's no more living to remember them. So even there's a place for them. You see, in African spirituality, our concept of time is different. Even the idea of past, present, and future is a lot more linear how we learn it in Western works. But in African spirituality, time overlaps itself. It overlaps itself because the memory of the past loved one still resides within us. It resides within the blood. That's what these tribes understood. So the person who has passed still has life in a way. They still have an existence. And then once their entire family lineage has passed on, they become a part of what you would understand as a deity or a part of the mythology. They almost lose their their real world essence, and they become almost immortal in a sense. Like they become a part of the vault of memories. Okay, so like I said, the Zamani is once the last person of that lineage, anyone who knows them has passed away. That entire memory becomes more of accessible vault that you can. It's still like accessible as us as humans, but the lineage from that family has now passed. It has now left out of the human form, if that makes sense. So the Sasha and the Zamani are interrelated because they're aspects of time. And the reason that you can access them is because it's about dimension. It's about dimensional time. More of like building on top instead of linear, like from one point to this point. It's more like dimensions in which it's levels. So Sasha is the now time of the spirit, the current events within like the last 6 months to a year of the past departed spirit. And the Zamani is the very far past. It absorbs and holds, it stores the memories of all the events that have ever occurred. So this includes the time of mythology, when we would tell stories through performance of creation. So like the Zamani covers the mythological allegorical stories of creation, and the Zamani is also accessed through the performance. Like the performer would, the concept of performing had a lot to do with going out into the world and coming back and explaining to people their travels or their conquests, their exploits. So a performer would come back and give their story, right? And these stories, these mythology, allegory stories that the performer is giving is also accessed through the Zamani, because once the tribe has passed, right, they're now not a part of the Sasha spirit, they're actually a part of the Zamani, the vault. So there's a book by an American sociologist called Lies My Teacher Told Me, and he actually talks about these Sasha and Zamani concepts of time from the Swahili regions, basically. And he's an American, but this book was written in 1995, but this is an interesting book. It's called Lies My Teacher Told Me, and it's like a history book that dispels the history told in American schools. So he brings up African origins because, you know, he's basically breaking the cycle of what we learn in school. Basically, you're not learning the true history or origin because you have to go all the way back to Africa, to these other tribes, in order to understand how American history has manifested, in which it's all interconnected. Okay, so the Sasha is literally the memory of your ancestors in your blood, and therefore it's the memory of the dead, right? And therefore the Sasha is within us as humans, and so we could be seen as the living dead because we can access the memory of our ancestors through our recollection with being with them, but also through the bloodlines. So this idea of the living dead is connected to the Sasha, or as we would know in commercialized world, the walking dead, right? Because the Sasha lives within us. The spirits live within us. So typically the Sasha are known by those who are living. So it's all overlapped. The dead and the living are concepts of time, of present versus past, and they're more overlapped in the understanding of African spirituality. So Zamanis are spirits not known by anyone who's currently alive. It's a limitless past. Even the English word past, as I've said, is too limiting. The Zamani is stronger than the Sasha because it is the all-encompassing history or past. The Sasha having to do with the present moment, right? The recently departed dissipates into the Zamani once all of those who are of the lineage have passed as well, who have left human form. So the Zamani is almost more powerful because the Sasha dissipates into the Zamani. Okay? So now when we're thinking about Sasha Fierce, going back to what I said about Fierce being untamed fire, and then the concept of Sasha, which is the spirits, the memory of the spirits of our ancestors in our blood, the term Sasha Fierce is the fire of the ancestors, the untamed nature of the ancestors and the memory of the ancestors. Sasha Fierce. Yeah, baby. So when this has taken place, what we have to see is that how we learn about time is a little bit boxed in. Sasha into Zamani is about the internal universal memory. So the past is something that is within us right now. And the idea is that we are in the present, but we actually move towards the past because we're moving towards death. You know, we're moving towards the Sasha spirit, our own Sasha spirit being tied into our lineage of our people, basically our children. So when you think about moving forward into the future, you're also moving forward into the past because you feel the past, you feel the Zamani as you continue to move forward towards the spirit that you will become once you have passed on, once you have departed from the human vessel. And this is all connected again for anyone who's joining me right now when it comes to the concepts of African spirituality and how they understood time. So Sasha is about time. It's about dimensions. It's about the spirits, the memory of the ancestors. Okay? The etymology of memory is recollection, awareness, consciousness. It's also connected to reputation and fame because memory is also derived from the memoirs, right? So the Sasha or the Zamani are like the memoirs of the past in your blood. So the memory is the recollection, the awareness that you can access your ancestors' memory, their stories, their mythologies within you. So you are the living, you are the walking dead in the sense that your ancestors live within you. And this also, the etymology of memory in Old English also is connected to mourning, like when you mourn someone who passes away. So the memory is the mourning, right? The mourning of our recently deceased loved ones, our relatives. So what I have found is that the concept of Sasha, actually, with it being derived from, you know, Old English in the short form of Alexander, but as we know, Old English is not the original. African and Ethiopian traditions are more original. And now we're talking about spirits, we're talking about ancestors, memory, the dead living within us, the accessible living within us. This is tied to the concept that is popularly known as the Akashic Records, because the Akashic Records is something that you tap into within yourself. You don't need a resource. You don't need an outside book, source, quotes at all. The Akashic Records is you accessing your DNA, your bloodlines, the memory of your ancestors, and gaining the answers from within yourself. So the Sasha and the Zamani, to me, relate to this concept of the Akashic Records. So as I've been saying, the Zamani is like a guarded vault. It contains everything that has taken place in the archive of the memory, or in the archive of the memoirs, or the archive of the mourning, those of us who mourn, those who we have lost. And what is also not practiced or understood in the Western world is that the dead, the memory of the dead, are so separate from you in Western ideologies, right? So when we go back to African practices, the concept of accessing the spirits is accessible in the present. That's, again, for anyone who doesn't really understand what I'm saying when I say Akashic Records and accessing the vault of memory, it's within you. And so that's what they believed in these regions, is that it was accessible and human to access the Sasha and the Zamani. This is where the ancestors recede when they are no longer remembered by their living, the Zamani. In a recent video that I did, I talked about how the personality splits as well. Like the personality or the mind can split, how the mind desires to strengthen itself. And this is why when experiencing certain kind of trauma, your mind can split, and then you can actually access or channel in the spirit or move through time, in the sense of moving through the memory of your own past, moving through the memory of your ancestral past. And this is where I feel like we have there's nothing that's black and white. So there are some people who can access Akashic Records maybe through meditation. There's some people who can access Akashic Records through performance, or through splitting, through the split in themselves, the physical split of the mind, to access different personalities, which is really them accessing different parts of the memory within the DNA. So, going back to Sasha Fierce, we have been introduced to Sasha Fierce as a personality by a famous celebrity. And the origins of Sasha Fierce are African, right? And we also have heard the celebrity say that the use of Sasha Fierce is her way of basically separating, guarding herself from the real world, you know, guarding her real self from other people. I really find that as I dive into the origins of Sasha Fierce, the ancestral fire, right? The memory of the ancestors' untamed fire, that this name is also a symbol, a representative of what must be accessed in order to guard yourself. So this entity who once called herself Sasha Fierce, I feel like it could be saying, like, either I can access my Akashic Records, or I channel ancestral fire in order to protect me. And this is your girl, Karina Dean. That is my decoding of Sasha Fierce. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.